All right, so today we're going to be talking about what I feel is an important component missing from middle school teachers' science and social studies, particularly when they teach writing to middle schoolers. And we're going to focus today on before you teach content, you should explicitly teach your students how to read and write content. And today we're going to focus on grammar. One thing I noticed last year when I was visiting middle schools is that teachers focus on content in science and social studies, ask students to write an essay, whether it's persuasive text or a historical text or whatever, but don't explicitly teach those students how to write that. And I believe the whole class would benefit from some pre-instruction and some post-instruction for editing purposes. So the books that I'm using today that I want to share is, first I'm using A Time for Kids, Day in the Life of Barack Obama. And I realize he's an ex-president now, but that will be important in the upcoming grammar lesson. This writing strategies book by Jennifer Saravallo is an excellent book with strategies on how to teach writing both before and after the student has written. And a lot of my lessons are coming from this book today. And then I also wanted to share this two other texts that are of equal value. One is the Fountas and Pinnell Literacy Continuum. Now, the reason this is important is if you get the reading level of a student you're working with, you can quickly glance in here and see what type of text that would be appropriate for them to do some research on, what level of text and what the expectations of their understanding of that text would be. In our school district, some of our classrooms have almost 50% English language learners, and if I believe from what I've seen in my teaching that middle school teachers will often assume a certain amount of reading understanding from their students, and this would be very helpful for them to understand what actual level their student is and make sure they cater some of their books to that level. And then finally, I wanted to share the Reading Mini Lessons book, which I also use when I am getting texts for EL students. Well, today's focus actually is grammar, and let's start with the first lesson that I might share with EL students. And the nice thing about all of these lessons is students can work together on these grammar things, and you are going to have students that are very above grade level in a classroom, and those students' pieces can be used as benchmark pieces to share with the other students so that everybody gets to see a high level of writing, especially from their peers. So here's one first example. Let's say, for example, you were asking in social studies to, let me just put this down, it's going to be loud. You were asking a student in social studies to write about the typical day in the life of a president, or say they chose Barack Obama as someone to write about in a biography essay in social studies. Something like this might be a text that they use, and for the EL student, you might decide to do a close read with them. So you could photocopy a piece of the text from the inside, and together, whole class, you could work on this because all students can benefit from this, is you can edit the paragraph together. So here's how we would do this one. Every morning around 9:30 a.m., President Obama meets with a team of advisors who update him on everything related to the safety and security of the nation. Vice President Biden usually attends the meeting. So you could photocopy this, or you could have this up on a board and invite students up to edit this. And what you might start with is say, well, we know Barack Obama is no longer president, so we need to think of this in terms of the past tense. And so you would have students start to change the tense on this. Every morning and around 9:30 a.m., Barack Obama You might have the student change this to used to, or met when he was in office with a team of advisors who updated him on everything related to the safety and security of the nation. Vice President Biden usually attended their meetings. And this is a really nice way to teach students how to use past tense correctly. You could first do this, and then you could have students work to write this information in their own words so that they were not plagiarizing, and you could have this anchor text on your wall as an example for students to go and use when they were working from their own texts. So that's just a little lesson I prepared myself, but I wanted to be clear that let me just put this down as well, that a lot of the grammar lessons that I'm going to use today I got from this book, and it is Jennifer Saravallo, Writing Strategies book. I wrote it up here because it is an excellent resource. And my opinion is when you explicitly teach things like this, you are not, as a middle school teacher, going back and giving every single student a small piece of advice on your writing. Rather, you're teaching the whole class holistically, and everybody's writing improves when you teach this whole class. So here's an example. Let's focus on nouns. First, you might say to a student, look over a paragraph, reread it, and you could have students do that together with their work. Where do you need more detail? Underline where you need more detail. Focus on your nouns and your noun phrases, and write them a bit longer. And a nice example of this is you could say to students, say for example you're writing about blizzards in a science class, and often students start with a hook, where they start with a story, and they might say, I looked out my window this morning and I saw a blizzard. You might say to the students, okay, focus on this, add more details, put in what are the causalities of a blizzard, what makes a blizzard, and they might start describing that trash cans were blowing along the road because in a blizzard winds need to be high. They might describe that the snow happened for several hours, and they also might describe that the visibility was gone. You're having them add those more details, so you can have students work on that together and use nouns to help them with that. Another type of grammar lesson that you can give to students, and you can teach this whole class and have students go back and revise their work before you even have to go in and read their work and give them tips, is the idea of being precise. And you can have anchor charts like this in your room, where students, you can just tap on the chart and all students can look up and they can go back and try and write in some more precise details in their writing. I haven't made these anchor charts very attractive. I mean, I just wanted this to be more focused on teachers, but you could add in some pictures here. You could have kids write this to make it look more attractive so students found it nicer to look at. But here's a little example. Instead of dog, you can write pit bull, boxer, labradoodle. You need to teach students to have to be more precise in their use of words when they are writing. And here is another example of a type of lesson that you could teach children to use, young adults I should say, before you go in and edit their work. Is you could have students sit down together and you could teach this lesson, which is tell students they can reread each other's work, reread your piece and find the nouns. Ask if there is another word that can work here. They can generate a list of options together and or on their own, and check a list with a friend and work on each other's work and add more interesting nouns to their work. Once again, I can't stress this enough. I never see anchor charts in middle schools, and I really believe that a well-made anchor chart is a lesson in itself, and you can just point to it when you think things are missing from kids' work and have them work on it together and take ownership of their work and internalize that information. So using pronouns is another important lesson that you can teach whole class that all students can benefit from, but you can really target your EL students here. I often think, I teach younger students to write a hook, and I always read in informational texts hooks. And as you're all adults, you probably know a hook is a short story at the beginning of an informational text to draw the reader in. So say you were going to write about tigers, or a student was going to write about tigers, they might start this way. This animal is strong, it has orange and white stripes, it eats a deer, it is a tiger. And instead of doing that, they could choose their pronouns and change. And for example, they could say, you are walking in the jungle on a dark, dark night. You hear a slight sound. A large shadow crosses your path and runs in front of you as it chases a deer. It is a tiger. Using your pronouns and changing that can give you a much, much stronger hook in your work. Pause. Okay, just to wrap up again, the strategy is make sure that you are teaching the grammar whole class, and that will improve everyone's writing rather than giving individual tips to single students. And also make anchor charts, as you can refer to them throughout the year, and students will see the lesson and they can pull up that lesson in their mind, even if it happened way in September, and they can go and revisit their work and improve their writing, particularly their use of grammar. Thank you.